If you've ever been obsessed with someone you barely knew, if fantasy felt safer than real intimacy, if you longed intensely and then lost interest the moment someone actually showed up, this isn't because you're avoidant, broken, or afraid of commitment. It's because fantasy once protected you. And until you understand what your nervous system is doing, you'll keep mistaking intensity for intimacy and repeating the same painful cycle. I often hear, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't stop thinking about them. They feel like a prisoner in their own mind. What's striking is that there often wasn't much of a relationship to begin with. The connection was minimal. Delayed replies, vague or inconsistent plans, intermittent attention, but the mind filled in the gaps. Meaning was assigned where none was offered. Potential was imagined instead of behavior being observed. Small moments were replayed and elevated into proof of connection. It starts to feel faded, like this person must be the one. But when you look more closely, something important becomes clear. The attachment isn't to the person, it's to the idea of the person, the fantasy the nervous system constructs in the absence of real emotional availability. This isn't about being dramatic or clinging or too much. It's a state known as limerence, a survival based attachment response that shows up frequently in high functioning, self aware, emotionally intelligent people. People who understand their trauma, people who are capable, reflective, and grounded in other areas of life, and yet still find themselves magnetized to someone emotionally unavailable. Because limerence doesn't come from immaturity, it comes from early protective strategies, patterns the brain learned long ago to cope with inconsistency, emotional absence, or unmet attachment needs. And once that clicks, something profound happens. Past relationships stop feeling confusing or shameful. Obsessive thoughts stop feeling like a personal flaw. And the pattern finally makes sense, not as weakness, but as adaptation. That understanding is where real healing begins. In this lecture, I'm going to walk you through what limerence actually is and why it feels like love even though it isn't, how fantasy bonds form in childhood, especially when parents looked good on paper but weren't emotionally safe or attuned, why you are drawn to unavailable, long distance, or emotionally inconsistent partners, why you lose interest when someone likes you back, and why that ick is a fear response, not intuition. Why stability can feel boring or unsafe if your nervous system was shaped by inconsistency. And most importantly, how to break the limerence cycle so you can choose real intimacy instead of fantasy. By the end, you'll understand this pattern not as a flaw, but as a survival strategy your nervous system learned long ago. And once you understand it, you can finally change it. Limerence is not love, it's a survival response. Limerence looks like love, intensity, longing, obsession, but it isn't. It's an attachment to an imagined version of a person. It's an obsessive attachment to an idea of someone distant, someone unavailable, someone you can imagine more than you can actually know. It feels like soulmate energy, but underneath it, limerence is a defense mechanism created by your nervous system to survive emotional pain. And until you understand that, you'll keep repeating the same painful patterns. You may replay moments like they were meaningful, assign depth to crumbs of attention, feel shame because you know better, chase a feeling more than a person. It's a psychobiological response built from childhood adaptation. If any part of this story feels familiar, if the fantasy feels bigger than the person, or the longing feels stronger than the relationship itself, Don't skip this next part. I created a fantasy love decoder quiz that identifies exactly which of the 5 fantasy relationship patterns your nervous system is running. It takes 2 minutes and will help you understand why certain people feel addictive and how to finally break the cycle. Click the link in the description below. The roots of limerence, childhood fantasy bonds. For many people, limerence doesn't begin in adulthood. It begins in childhood, when love required imagination. When your parents looked good on paper, but emotionally something didn't quite land. Maybe they were controlling but caring, intrusive but concerned, involved but not emotionally attuned. In some cases, a parent, often a mother, relied on you for emotional closeness in ways that blurred boundaries. Not overt abuse, but emotional incest, where you became a source of comfort, validation, or identity for them. And here's the hard part. Because they seemed like good parents, it was dangerous to face the truth. So instead, your nervous system did something quite brilliant. It created a fantasy bond. You imagined them as the loving, nurturing parent you needed instead of grieving what was actually missing. Fantasy became a coping mechanism, a way to avoid pain, a way to survive. Limerence begins in childhood environments where real emotional connection was inconsistent, conditional, or unsafe. Children in emotionally unpredictable homes develop fantasy bonds to cope with neglect, controlling parents, inconsistent care, conditional love. The fantasy bond may start off as a celebrity crush or a book character crush. Then, as the child becomes an adolescent or teenager, the fantasy bond may shift to a crush in school. Reality was painful, so the child imagined a connection to survive it. I hear this especially from clients who say, "I had the perfect childhood. My parents were the best parents." No one has the perfect childhood. When they glorify their parents, there are usually blind spots to their parents' true nature or how there were holes in their upbringing. When we peel back their upbringing, we begin to see things that were missing, such as they had the financial and action-based help from their parents, but not close emotional support. How it shows up. Your adult relationships replay the same script. If I can imagine closeness, I don't have to feel the loss. Why you choose unavailable people. The same strategy follows you into adulthood. You don't attach to people, you attach to who they could be. You daydream, you obsess, you replay interactions, you fall in love with potential. And when someone is distant, unavailable, or long distance, your nervous system relaxes. Because distance gives you room to stay in fantasy. This is why twin flame dynamics feel intoxicating, long-distance relationships feel safer, emotionally unavailable people feel magnetic. Fantasy protects you from the risk of real disappointment. You don't fall for people who are unavailable, you fall for people who leave space for fantasy. Because longing is familiar, and familiar feels safe. Who are you typically drawn to? Long-distance partners, taken partners, hot and cold partners, mysterious partners, emotionally unavailable people. How your nervous system reads it. Distance equals safety, closeness equals danger. Some people grow up inside emotional triangles. For example, imagine a child whose mother subtly competes with her for the father's attention. Affection isn't freely given, it's contested. Love feels scarce. Being chosen feels earned. In that environment, the child doesn't just want love, she learns to compete for it. Later in adulthood, that same nervous system may feel most alive when someone is already attached, there's a rival, desire must be proven, attention feels unstable, not because of malice, not because of morality, but because competition became paired with connection early on. You're not chasing love, you're chasing the feeling of longing your nervous system learned in childhood. And until longing is uncoupled from love, availability will feel dull and distance will feel intoxicating. Why you lose interest when someone likes you back? You're obsessed until they like you back. Then you experience the ick, all because fantasy collapses under reality. Real connection means being seen, being known, risking rejection. Fantasy required none of that. Someone liking you back breaks the fantasy. You lose control of the story. Someone's interest exposes the parts of you that feel unlovable. The brain rejects vulnerability, not the person. Your ick response is not intuition. It's a fear response to being emotionally seen. You don't feel subconsciously you are worthy of sincere love. Why you can't find the one. People stuck in limerence often believe the right partner hasn't appeared yet. And if you have an insecure attachment style, you are more likely to immerse yourself in limerence. You're searching for a partner who lets you stay in fantasy, intensity over stability. Your thoughts sound like, I just haven't met my soulmate. I'm waiting for something totally epic. And underlining all of this, stability feels unfamiliar. Unfamiliar feels unsafe. Your type is actually your trauma. You're attracted to partners that keep you in fantasy because reality feels threatening. How to break the limerence cycle. There is a way out, but it requires choosing reality over fantasy. Shift number 1, accept imperfection. No partner can match the fantasy version in your mind. Shift number 2, normalize calm love. Real love is often grounded, consistent, and emotionally steady, not euphoric. Reassociate calm with love and retrain attraction by choosing people who are consistent and allow warmth without intensity. This will often feel disappointing before it feels safe. Shift number 3, allow vulnerability. Connection requires being seen, not performing an idealized version of yourself. First, realize your brain isn't chasing the person, it's chasing relief from an old emotional wound. Grieve what limerence was protecting you from. Grief that was never processed, loneliness that feels unbearable, childhood longing that never had a witness. But just note, when limerence fades, grief rises. People often relapse here, not because they miss the person, but because they miss the anesthesia. Outgrowing limerence means letting grief complete its cycle instead of interrupting it with fantasy. What this does for your nervous system. It teaches your body that love can be predictable, safe, mutual, real. Limerence is evidence of past hurt, not future destiny. You can outgrow the fantasy and choose intimacy that exists in the present moment. It is important to also build an identity outside of being chosen. You outgrow limerence when your life feels so meaningful you don't need to escape through romantic intensity. Your self-esteem isn't contingent on another person's desire. Connection becomes addictive, not stabilizing. It's a developmental shift for your nervous system to no longer need fantasy to feel alive, safe, or valuable. So be patient with yourself during this process. Limerence takes time and deliberate effort to resolve. If this resonated with you, there's a reason. You might be living in one of the 5 fantasy relationship types, and limerence is only one of them. I created a free quiz that tells you exactly which one you fall into, why it's happening, and how to break it. Click the link below, because real love is not built in fantasy, it's built in reality.